He was looking at her. Not the way men usually looked at her, assessing, admiring, categorizing. He was looking at her the way someone looks at a fire they've been watching build for a long time. Like he had been waiting. Amara stopped walking. "You're getting rained on," she informed him flatly, because her mouth had never learned to stay quiet even when the rest of her was in crisis. "So are you," he said. His English was flawless, accented in a way that moved through the air like smoke. "I'm aware. I'm also wearing a wedding dress in the rain, which makes me significantly more interesting than you." She looked down at herself. "Or significantly more pathetic. The jury is still out." Something moved across his face. Not a smile exactly, more like the possibility of one. Like a door cracked open in a dark room. "My name is Ji-ho," he said. "Shin Ji-ho." "Good for you," Amara said. "You don't want to know why I'm standing outside your wedding in the rain?" She looked at him for a long moment. Rain ran down her cheekbones. Her dress was completely ruined. Her mother was probably inside the chapel already rewriting the narrative, turning Amara's exit into a mental breakdown for the benefit of the relatives. "I walked out of my own wedding approximately 4 minutes ago," Amara said. "My mother conspired with my almost husband to steal from me. I am standing on a public road in a destroyed dress that cost more than my monthly salary." She met his eyes. "So no. Whatever your reason is, it cannot possibly be the strangest thing that has happened to me today." This time he did smile. It was the most dangerous thing she had ever seen. And she had seen a great many dangerous things. "Get in the car," he said quietly. "Before you catch a cold." "I don't get into cars with strangers." "Lieutenant Commander Asante," he said, her full rank, her full name, perfectly pronounced. "You've been getting into dangerous situations your entire career. This one at least has heated seats." The world went very still. He knew her name. Her rank. He had known before she'd said a single word. She should have walked away. Every instinct she'd sharpened over a decade of naval training said to walk away, flag down a taxi, call her best friend ESI, do literally anything other than what she was about to do. Amara Asante opened the car door and got in. The inside of the car smelled like cedar and something darker. Expensive whiskey, maybe, or the specific scent of a man who made decisions that kept other men up at night. A woman appeared from the front seat. Small, precise, with cropped hair and eyes that catalogued Amara in approximately 1 second, and handed back a folded black towel without a word. Amara took it. "Thank you." "That's Yuna," Ji-ho said, settling into the seat beside Amara with the ease of a man who had never been uncomfortable in his life. "She doesn't talk much." "I talk," Yuna said flatly from the front. "I just have nothing to say to wet brides." "I'm not a bride," Amara said. "I'm a woman who was almost a bride. There's a difference. One is a legal status. The other is a near miss." Yuna looked at her in the rearview mirror. Something shifted in those sharp eyes. Respect, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. The car pulled smoothly into Accra traffic, and Amara wrapped the towel around her shoulders and sat in the strange luxury of someone else's silence for exactly 45 seconds before her mouth betrayed her. "So are you going to tell me how you know my name and rank, or are we doing the mysterious stranger performance all the way to wherever we're going?" "We're going to a restaurant," Ji-ho said. "I'm in a wedding dress." "The best ones don't care." Amara looked at him. He was looking forward, profile cutting clean lines against the rain-streaked window. He had a small scar below his left ear, old, faded, the kind that came from something that had happened too fast to duck. "You have 3 minutes," she said, "to tell me something that justifies me not opening this door and rolling out onto the street. We're doing 60 kilometers an hour. I've done worse." He turned then, and looked at her fully for the first time since she'd gotten in. Up close, his eyes were darker than she'd realized. Not black, something between black and the deepest possible brown, the color of deep water. "I know your name," he said, "because I've been watching you for 3 months. Not in a concerning way." That is an incredibly concerning thing to say. "Your fiancé, Kofi Mensah, has been laundering money through a company he co-owns with your uncle. The company uses your military credentials, your name, your reputation, as a shield. You were never supposed to find out. He said it simply, the way someone reports weather. I found out 8 weeks ago. I've been deciding what to do about it. The rain. The restaurant. The heated seats. All of it went quiet. My uncle, Amara said carefully. Emmanuel Asante. Yes. And my mother. A pause. She knew about the financial scheme. I don't believe she knew the full extent. Amara sat with that for a moment. She was very good at receiving terrible information without flinching. The Navy had trained that into her bones. You heard the worst and you kept your face neutral and your breathing even and you dealt with it. She dealt with it. Then she said, "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" Because the authorities in this particular situation are the problem. She looked at him. I'm going to need you to elaborate on that. After dinner, he said. I could have you arrested. You could try. Not arrogant, simply factual. But I think you're smarter than that. And I think you want answers more than you want a clean conscience tonight. He was right. She hated that he was right. I want it on record, Amara said, that I think this is a terrible decision and I'm making it with full awareness. Noted. And if you turn out to be dangerous? Lieutenant Commander. He finally looked at her again, and there it was, that almost smile, that cracked door warmth. I am absolutely dangerous. I just have no interest in being dangerous to you. The restaurant materialized out of the rain like something from a different world, a Korean Ghanaian fusion place tucked into a quiet corner of airport residential, all warm amber light and low music. The maitre d' took one look at Amara's wedding dress and Jiho's expression and decided wisely to say absolutely nothing. They were given a private table. Amara sat across from a Korean Mafia boss in her ruined wedding dress, ordered the spiciest thing on the menu out of spite, and said, "Start talking." He did. And somewhere between the first course and the second, between the shock of everything she was learning and the strange gravitational pull of the man telling her, Amara Asante realized something terrifying. She wasn't afraid of him at all. That, more than anything, should have scared her. Here was the thing about Shin Ji-ho that Amara would later, much later, when she was rational again, identify as the first moment of real danger. He was funny. Not in an obvious way. Not in the way men performed humor to impress women. In the quiet, dry, perfectly timed way of someone who noticed everything and chose to say only the most precise thing at the most precise moment. Like when she knocked over her water glass reaching for the menu and he handed her a napkin without looking up from his own and said, deadpan, Navy training. She laughed. Actually laughed. At her own disaster of a wedding day. It was infuriating. Stop being charming, she told him. I'm trying to be appropriately suspicious of you. You can do both, he said. I do both all the time. They were 2 hours into dinner. Her dress had dried into something sculptural and slightly crispy. She had eaten an entire bowl of kimchi jjigae that had made her eyes water in the most satisfying way. Jiho had, piece by piece, laid out what he knew about Kofi, her uncle, and the shell company that had been using her name and naval connections as cover for financial crimes that stretched across 3 countries. It was a lot. Why do you know all of this? She asked. It was the question she'd been circling all evening. What's your actual interest in Ghanaian financial crime? He was quiet for a moment. Not evasive, thinking. One of the companies connected to your uncle's scheme was moving money that was supposed to be moving somewhere else. Somewhere connected to my operations. Your operations, she repeated. Which are? He met her eyes. Import. Export. Certain kinds of facilitation. Facilitation, she said. That's the most polite word I've ever heard used for organized crime. I never said organized crime. You didn't have to. I'm a naval officer. I've been briefed on people like you. She tilted her head. Shin Ji-ho. You're not in the Ghana briefs specifically. But there's a Shin family in the Seoul network. Connected to Busan originally. 3rd generation. Something in his expression shifted. Surprise, quickly contained. You looked me up, he said. In my head, yes, in approximately 40 seconds, using briefings I memorized 6 months ago. She smiled sweetly. I'm very good at my job. He stared at her. You're not what I expected, he said finally. People keep making that mistake. She picked up her chopsticks. What did you expect? A damsel? Someone weeping into her bouquet? Someone more cautious? Oh, I'm cautious. I'm extremely cautious. I'm also sitting across from the only person who's given me real information today, so my caution and my curiosity are currently arm wrestling and curiosity is winning. She pointed a chopstick at him. Tell me what you want from me. Actually want. Not the polished version. Ji-ho leaned back. It was the first time all evening she'd seen him shift, really shift, like she'd said something that moved something in him. I want your help, he said. Your uncle's scheme has created a problem I need to resolve quietly. Quietly means not through channels that would expose either of us. You have access, security clearances, contacts, institutional knowledge, that I don't. And in exchange? I dismantle everything Kofi and your uncle built. Completely. Irrevocably. Your name is cleared, your pension is protected, and they never touch anything connected to you again. Amara was quiet. She was running numbers in her head, risk assessments, probability matrices, the kind of calculations that had kept her alive in situations that were supposed to be routine. This was not routine. This was a Korean organized crime figure asking a naval officer to help him run an off-books operation in her home country. It was insane. It was also, she had to admit, the most interesting proposal she'd received today. And she'd received a marriage proposal this morning, so that was saying something. I need 3 things, she said. He raised an eyebrow. 1. Nothing you ask me to do compromises the security of Ghana or any allied nation. My loyalty to my uniform is not negotiable under any circumstance. Agreed. 2. I want full documentation of everything Kofi and my uncle did. Everything. I want it in a format I can understand and keep. Done. 3. She put down her chopsticks. Whatever we're doing, we do it as partners. Not you directing and me following. Equal information. Equal decisions. He looked at her for a long moment. You just negotiated with me, he said. I just negotiated successfully with you, she corrected. There's a difference. And there it was again, that door opening. Except this time it opened further. This time she could see something on the other side of it, a man who was not used to being surprised, encountering someone who kept surprising him. It looked, she thought, a lot like admiration. Partners, he said, and extended his hand across the table. She shook it. His hand was warm. Steadier than it had any right to be. And he held on for exactly 1 second longer than a handshake required. She noticed. She filed it away. So, she said, releasing his hand with supreme composure, do partners get dessert, or is this strictly a professional arrangement? He signaled the waiter immediately. Good answer. 3 days later, Amara stood in front of the mirror in her apartment wearing her naval uniform and considered the spectacular mess her life had become. The wedding fallout had been, in a word, biblical. Her aunties had divided into 2 factions, the ones who thought she was brave and the ones who thought she was broken, and both factions had sent food, which at least meant she had a full refrigerator. Kofi had called 11 times. She had not answered once. Her uncle Emmanuel had sent a message through her cousin that said family matters should stay in the family, which told her Jiho's intelligence had been exactly right. Her mother had not called. That silence sat in Amara's chest like a stone. She was used to moving through difficulty. She'd been doing it her whole career, her whole life, but her mother's silence was a different kind of weight. The kind you couldn't just run faster to escape. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The file you requested is ready. Also, there's a night market in OSU tonight. I'll be there at 8 if you want to review it somewhere that isn't an office. She stared at the message. Then she typed back, this is a terrible way to share classified documents. Ji-ho, it's not classified. It's personal. And I prefer to think of it as creative venue selection. Amara, you want to do a covert intelligence handoff at a night market. Ji-ho, I want to eat kelaweel at a night market. The handoff is secondary. She put the phone down. She picked it up again. Amara, if you're late, I'm leaving. She was at the OSU night market by 7:55. She was in civilian clothes, a rust-colored wrap dress, her braids loose for the first time in weeks, and she told herself this was practical. Practical for blending in. Practical for not drawing attention. Definitely not because she tried on 3 outfits. She found him at a Kellerwheel stall at 8 exactly. He was in a dark jacket and dark jeans, holding 2 paper cones of the fried plantain and looking entirely too comfortable for a man who ran an international criminal network. He spotted her and held out one of the cones. "You're on time," she said, taking it. "I'm always on time. Good quality in a business partner." They walked. The market was warm and loud and smelled like spices and fried everything, and there was music coming from somewhere. High life, the kind that made your shoulders move whether you wanted them to or not. Amara's shoulders moved. Jiho watched with barely concealed delight. "Don't," she warned. "I didn't say anything." "You were about to." "I was going to say you have good rhythm." "That's suspiciously nice." "I'm a surprisingly nice person," he said. "You run a criminal empire." "I prefer parallel economy." She stopped walking to look at him. In the warm light of the market, with Kellerwheel in her hand and music threading through the air, he looked different than he had in the rain, different than he had in the restaurant. Less like a tactical assessment and more like a person. A very attractive person, a traitorous part of her brain noted. She shut that down immediately. "The file," she said. He produced a slim envelope from his jacket. She took it without breaking eye contact, slid it into her bag and said, "Thank you." "You're welcome. Now tell me the part you left out at dinner." He blinked. "What part?" "The part where there's a third party. Someone above your level who's been using my uncle's network as a conduit." She watched his face. "There's always a third party. Otherwise you'd have handled this without me." A pause. "I didn't leave that out," he said carefully. "You didn't say it directly. You left room for me to not ask." She ate a piece of Kellerwheel with tremendous calm. "I'm asking." Jiho looked at her for a long moment. The market noise swelled around them. Someone was selling lanterns nearby and they cast shifting gold light across his face. "There's a man," he said quietly. "Connected to Interpol. Using legitimate networks to move illegitimate money. He's been using your uncle as a local interface because your family name carries weight in certain circles." A pause. "His name is Park Dae-young. He's my father's former associate." The word former carried enormous weight. "Former as in they had a falling out," Amara said. "Former as in my father is dead and Park Dae-young is the reason." The market kept moving. The music kept playing. And Amara stood in the middle of it and understood, with perfect clarity, that she had not just stumbled into a financial crime. She had walked into something old and deep and personal. She also understood, and this was the part that should have made her run, that she didn't want to walk away from it. From it. From him. From the way he'd just told her something real, something that cost him, and kept his voice steady the whole time. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Okay, we deal with Park Dae-young too." She finished her Kellerwheel. "But we do it my way when it touches my country. Those are still the terms." "Those are still the terms," he agreed. They walked for another hour after that. Just walked, through the warm Accra night, past the food stalls and the fabric sellers and the people living their loud, ordinary, beautiful lives. They talked about small things. She told him about her first naval deployment. He told her, very reluctantly, that he'd once burned 3 batches of rice in a row and had been forbidden from the kitchen by his own staff. She laughed until her stomach hurt. He looked at her laughing and did the thing with his face again, that door opening. When they reached the edge of the market, he said, "I'll have my car take you home." "I have a car." "Then I'll watch you reach it safely." She turned to look at him. Jiho. Amara. First names. No ranks, no titles. Just 2 people standing in the dark after something that was definitely not a date. "Thank you," she said. "For the Kellerwheel. And the other thing." The intelligence file or the company? She smiled. Both. She walked to her car. She didn't look back. But she knew the way she knew everything she'd ever committed to memory, that he watched her all the way there. The intelligence file changed everything. Amara spent 2 days going through it with the precision she'd applied to every mission brief of her career. Cross-referencing names, flagging dates, mapping the money trail across 4 countries. It was meticulous and damning and confirmed every word Ji-ho had told her. It also confirmed that Park Dae-young had people inside the Ghanaian government. Which meant she and Ji-ho had approximately no margin for error and a very shrinking window of time. She called him on the 4th day. "We have a problem," she said when he picked up. "Which one specifically?" "Park moved money through a secondary account 2 days ago. The account is in my name." Silence. "Then, how fast can you meet me?" "Give me 40 minutes. 30. She was there in 28. He'd sent a car, a different one this time, which told her he was varying his routes, and it took her to a property on the outskirts of the city that she filed into memory with her coordinates and landmarks, as was habit. The house was large and deceptively modest from the outside, the kind of understated that actually meant the opposite. Inside, it was warm and spare and filled with the specific quiet of a place where serious things happened. Ji-ho was at a table covered in documents. 2 people she didn't recognize stood at the edges of the room. Not threatening, just present, the way a perimeter looks when someone important is inside it. Yuna was there too, laptop open. He looked up when she walked in. Something in his posture, already coiled, relaxed by approximately 1 fraction. "Sit," he said. "This is my meeting too," she said, "so that's a suggestion, not an order." Yuna made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Amara sat. They worked for 6 hours. It was the most professionally intimate experience of her life. 2 people from completely different worlds, speaking different tactical languages, translating for each other in real time. He understood networks and leverage and the invisible architecture of power. She understood institutional systems, legal exposure, the pressure points of military bureaucracy. Together, they were building something. Around hour 4, he brought her coffee without being asked, the right amount of sugar, which she had never told him, and set it down beside her without a word and went back to his side of the table. She stared at the coffee for 3 seconds. Then she drank it and said nothing and felt something warm and complicated move through her chest. By hour 6, they had a plan. Not a perfect plan, there wasn't time for perfect, but a functional, executable, extremely illegal on his end and legally ambiguous on her end plan that would neutralize Park Dae-young's immediate threat, clear Amara's name from the fraudulent account, and give them enough leverage to begin dismantling the larger operation. "This will work," she said, reviewing it one final time. "It will work," he agreed. "I want it noted that I contributed at least 60% of the strategic thinking." She stood at the altar in her dress, bouquet trembling in her hands, tears sliding silently down her face, not because she was overwhelmed with joy, but because she had just overheard her mother and her fiancé laughing in the corridor outside the chapel. "She'll never find out," her fiancé had said. "By the time she does, I'll already have access to her military pension and her inheritance. She's too proud to admit she was fooled." And her mother, the woman who had carried her, raised her, braided her hair on Sunday mornings, had laughed and said, she always was too smart for her own good. This will humble her. Lieutenant Commander Amara Asante had survived naval combat training. She had navigated warships through storms that would make grown men weep. She had stared down superiors twice her size without blinking. But nothing, had prepared her for this. She dropped the bouquet. She walked out of that chapel. And somewhere in the shadows of that rainy Accra afternoon, a pair of cold, dark eyes watched her leave. He had been watching her for 3 months. And today was the day he decided she was worth more than his silence. Before we begin, my mum said this video cannot reach 10,000 views and 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong. Smash that like button, subscribe right now, and drop in the comments where you are watching from. Now let's get into this story. The rain in Accra didn't care about dignity. It came down in thick, warm sheets, the kind that flattened silk and turned red carpet into a muddy river, and Lieutenant Commander Amara Asante walked straight into it without flinching. Her ivory wedding dress clung to her like a second skin within seconds. Her braids, pinned up in an elaborate crown that had taken her cousin 4 hours to finish, began to droop like defeated soldiers. Her heels sank into the soft earth of the chapel garden with every step. She didn't stop. Behind her, she could hear the chaos beginning inside. Her aunties screaming. Her father calling her name. The pastor clearing his throat. And Kofi, her almost husband, her 3-year relationship, her carefully selected future, calling after her in a voice slick with practiced panic. Amara. Amara, wait, it's not what you think. She spun around so fast that rainwater flew from her braids like sparks. Kofi. Her voice was perfectly calm. Terrifyingly calm. The kind of calm she used when she was about to report a subordinate. I have navigated a frigate through the Gulf of Guinea at 2 in the morning with a broken compass. I have disarmed 2 men who were twice your size with my bare hands. I have survived 6 months on a naval base where the showers ran cold and the food was a personal attack. She took 1 step toward him. Do not, she said softly, insult my intelligence by finishing that sentence. Kofi's mouth closed. She turned back around and kept walking. She had no plan. That was the terrifying part. Lieutenant Commander Amara Asante always had a plan. Backup plans, contingency plans, emergency plans written in the margins of her emergency plans. But right now, in a soaking wet wedding dress in the middle of Accra, she had absolutely nothing. Except fury. She had plenty of that. She made it to the road outside the chapel gates, where the black cars of wedding guests were parked in a long gleaming row. The rain had chased most of the drivers into their vehicles. The street was nearly empty. Nearly. There was one man standing outside in the rain. He wasn't dressed for a wedding. He wore a dark suit, expensive, the kind that was cut to fit exactly one body and had never seen the inside of a department store, and he stood beside a sleek black car with the ease of someone who owned the entire street and was simply allowing others to use it. He was Korean. Tall, sharp-jawed, with hair pushed back from a face that looked like it had been designed specifically to cause problems. He held no umbrella. The rain hit him and seemed, somehow, to be slightly afraid. I'll note 45. Ji-ho. 50, he said. Final offer. She looked at him across the table full of documents, in this house that wasn't a home but felt, strangely, like somewhere she could breathe. He looked tired in the way that people who carry heavy things look tired, not broken, just weighted. She thought about what he'd told her at the market. His father. Park Dae-young. The word former carrying all that grief. Hey, she said quietly. He looked up. We're going to get him, she said. Simply. Certainly. The way she said everything she meant. Not just because he's a threat. Because he owes you something. And I intend to help you collect. Ji-ho went very still. When people weren't used to being looked after, she'd noticed, they went still. Like their body didn't know how to receive it and had to pause and recalibrate. He recalibrated. Then he stood, walked around the table and stopped in front of her. Closer than was strictly necessary, close enough that she could see the scar below his ear and the careful way he was controlling his breathing. Amara, he said. Ji-ho, she said. I need you to know something. You can tell me after. Now. His voice was low. The way this started, you getting into the car, the dinner, everything after, I had reasons. Operational reasons. You know that. I know that. Those reasons stopped being the primary ones approximately 2 hours into dinner on the first night. He said it with the same precise calm he used for everything, but there was something underneath it now that she'd never heard before. Something unguarded. I want that on record. Amara's heart was doing something she was going to address later. So noted, she said softly. He reached up, slowly, telegraphing every movement, and tucked a loose braid behind her ear. His fingers grazed her cheek for one moment. Just one. Then his phone went off. He answered it. She watched his face change, the warmth folding back, the operational mask sliding into place, and he said 2 words in Korean that she didn't need translated because the color had drained from his face. He hung up. What? She asked. Park Dae-young knows we've been meeting. He was already moving, already giving quiet, rapid instructions to the people at the edges of the room. He's not waiting for us to make the first move. How long do we have? Ji-ho looked at her. In his eyes was something she recognized, the calculation of someone who has just realized the situation has escalated past the plan. There's something else, he said. Something I didn't tell you. Her blood went cold. Ji-ho. Your naval commanding officer, he said quietly. Admiral Kwame Dako. He's been meeting with Park Dae-young for 6 months. The room went very, very quiet. Her commanding officer. The man who had signed her deployment papers. Written her commendation letters. Shaken her hand at every promotion ceremony and told her she was the best naval officer he'd had in 20 years. How sure are you? She whispered. Ji-ho's jaw tightened. Certain. Amara stood. She stood and she was perfectly still, and she ran through every interaction she'd had with Admiral Dako in the past 6 months, every briefing, every piece of information she'd shared, every moment of professional trust she'd extended, and the ice in her chest spread to her fingertips. He knows what I know, she said. Yes. Which means he knows about you. Yes. Which means we have hours, Ji-ho said. Maybe less. She looked at him. He looked at her. And in that moment, in that terrible, electric, frightening moment, she made a decision. She was all in. Not because she had no choice. Not because she was trapped or desperate or afraid. But because standing across from Shin Ji-ho felt, against every reasonable calculation she'd ever run, like standing exactly where she was supposed to be. Tell me everything, she said. Every single thing you know. Right now. He nodded. And then his second phone, the one she'd never seen before, the one that lived in his inside jacket pocket, began to ring. He looked at the screen. The color left his face entirely. What is it? She asked. He turned the phone toward her. The screen showed a single incoming call. The name read, Park Dae-young. Amara's hand moved to the place on her hip where her service weapon lived when she was in uniform. Ji-ho's hand moved to hers. Not to stop her. To hold it. Whatever happens next, he said quietly, we do it together. The phone kept ringing. And in the space between one heartbeat and the next, Lieutenant Commander Amara Asante and Shin Ji-ho, naval officer and Mafia boss, the most unlikely partnership in the history of bad decisions, stared at a ringing phone and stepped off the edge of everything. Will Amara and Ji-ho answer the call? And what does Park Dae-young want? Can they trust each other when everything unravels? And what happens when a Navy officer and a Mafia boss stop pretending this is only about business? Part 2 drops soon. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And comment below, Team Jiho or Team Amara, run girl run? Backhand index pointing down, fire.